Hello and welcome to the aMarieSpeaks podcast. Today's episode is number 4 in my season 2 video podcast transitory offerings here. Not on Spotify anymore here. It is September 25th, 2024, and this is a brainstorming session. It's going to be a continuation of episode 3. So if you haven't seen or watched / listened to that yet, I would really suggest hopping over there. I'll put the link in the description for anybody who's maybe new or just finding this video, because I am going to hop right into the prayer where I left off. So if you're interested in hearing the first section, you can listen to that. It's not prerequisite, so if you're here, welcome. Don't feel like you have to. Definitely click off. You can listen to this and just listen to episode number 1 later, or number 3, but part 1. Getting confusing here with signatures and labels, but who cares? In all honesty, right? Welcome to today's episode. Let's get down to what we're talking about. This wonderful prayer has really been such a exercise to come back to for me over these last 2 years, to really commit to seeing and hearing the same words over and over again is an exercise all in itself, and that comes with certain wisdom points and certain experience points that are worth it in general, but particularly the old-timey language, the more traditional sort of Christian wording that comes through here with Walter Russell, I have found, I found immediate uncomfortability with. I wanted very much to, I heard a lot of truth in it, and from the very start, I felt it was very powerful, and I wanted to work with it, but I had these kind of initial bristles or, rough edges or whatever around some of the more traditional language. But over time, I've really kind of come around to appreciating it. And to just start off today's episode, I'm going to be, like I said, kind of jumping into where I left off. And where I left off was talking about the lines that say, "To the glory of Him whom I am not, to the fulfillment of His command, nor to the fulfillment of His purposes." And right there in itself is what I want to talk about for a few minutes, and the language, the old-timey language, the traditionalness of it, and also my initial sort of assumptions, presumptions, and really my own distortions that I create and took into myself immediately, initially and originally, upon hearing these lines. First of all, we see the signature "to the glory of Him whom I am not," right? And there's this Him word, the capital H, and that goes along with the traditional sense of the Father, and that in itself, for me, was sort of entire lesson in itself, that word, and the many different layers that come along with that. I had always had a very thick layering of these different sort of lies, I guess, or distortions around the Father and Him. And really I've taken them on, or I took them on from others, I think, because, or they're just sort of thoughts. It's very difficult to speak on your own distortions and judgments, your own perceptions and beliefs and ideologies, and what's true and what's not, and what felt true to you at one point which doesn't feel true to you anymore. How do you reference that and talk about that? You know, these are obviously new things for me. I'm sure they're new for others, and I'm sure there's plenty of others out there who have more of a tool belt around these things than I do. But as always, you know, sharing where I'm at with honesty and transparency, that's what this is for. And I will say that for me to even be able to say to the glory of Him is a whole working. And sometimes I think, oh, I hear almost others saying, you know, oh, God is not a man. It's not a man in the sky. It's not right to think of Him like that, or to call Him him, her, you know, or they want to say it's a she, or something different, or pinpoint it to something more truer to them. And that's fine and that's okay, but I have come around the entire mountain now, sort of, as to just call it all Him, and to know that there's many different ecosystems involved in the mountain, but all of them are reflections of the same oneness of Creator, of God, of infinite intelligence. And it really doesn't matter what words we use. You know, it's the truth inside of the word that matters. And each of us is free to go around that however they like to, but that's something that I have sort of peeled back the layer upon. And I feel like I'm going to do an entire episode on this kind of man and him and the language. I think I mentioned that in the first brainstorming episode as well. So we can look for that over there on YouTube on my regular Deconstructing Distortions series, video series, to highlight as a term. But I just wanted to bring it in here as I go through these lines, because I just did an episode, very first episode, on the word command. And I'm about, you know, we're going to go into the fulfillment of His command, or the fulfillment of His purposes, kind of the second half of that kickoff lines here. And not to go over too much of what I've already talked about in that episode, the commands and His purposes, I really feel like those words represent the organic, infinite intelligence, the original directions of organic growth is what I see as His commands. God's command is organic instructions or directions. They are infused with unconditional love, correctness, and that which is right and best, not only for the single individual, but also for the whole that it is a part of. For God can see outside of the whole, right? He is outside of the whole, and so therefore He can judge best, or creator consciousness, whatever you want to just say as that mysterious outsider creator consciousness. It knows and can judge what is best for the whole, because, you know, it's outside of the whole. And this is another thing about not being, you know, I love how it says, to the glory of Him whom I am not, and to be really giving up and disengaging from this need of control, and especially for me and my own personality and my own things that I do, my own makeup, right? My roles that I do in my life, and I have a lot of people who depend on me, and I have a lot of things to do, you know? It's so gratifying, relief offering. It's relaxing. It helps me to lean into faith more, to remember and relinquish that sort of control of the whole, of organizing ultimate good, and to know that it actually is all taken care of already for me. I don't need to worry about that. I need to just focus on what's present in my moment and going towards that flow that feels good, following the truth of my commandments, following my purposes, in my day. That is my commitment to the whole, and that is my way. I cannot see the whole forest through my path, right? I don't have that outsider view that God has outside to look down. And so it's so wonderful for me to tie back into that, remember that. I do this prayer once a week, but I have a friend who does it more than that. I have other friends who've done it, sporadically and had wonderful different moments. But for me, coming back each week works with my light and shadow cycles, so that I don't get too built up in any place or space within myself, to where I'm getting that Godhead again, to where I think I need to be out there controlling others, to where I think I have an influence or a scope or an ego set I view that is even comparable to that of creator consciousness before and after. It brings me back to the humbleness and the limitedness of my first person view, to remember that yes, I do have a scope and a capability. There is this astral view, there is the higher self, conscious awareness to step out and view things from my God source point of view, my own rightful third person point of view. But that in itself is not God's point of view. And I think if we ever think and get into this mind space that we literally can get out of the here and now and into before and after, and have some sort of true external confirmation, that's not part of the game. It's not part of the structure to even be able to do that, I think, in my opinion. And this, reminds me of that, and it helps me to lean into that and to say, yes, I don't need to even worry about that. I need to just remember that whatever is God source infinity intelligence outside of here has set this in motion, and the flow and intention is that of unconditional love and the greatest good and the highest good of all. And again, just to reiterate, me saying whom I am not, to the fulfillment of his command or to the fulfillment of his purposes, that really embodies that line for me. That's what I'm envisioning when I say that line, leaning back into all of that and letting it go and trusting in his commands and his purposes are that which come for and from the highest good of all. And I love how it goes into, it cements this, and I sort of already talked about this in my explanation of it, but it says, if I build the day, right? And I like to sort of switch this up and go into saying, if I build my day, I will have lived the day to the glory of the one, in the fulfillment of that part of his purpose, which is mine to fulfill. And that is kind of how I just described my own reasoning behind those words right now, but those are Walter Russell's specific words. And I love those words. It's like I am speaking and recognizing and owning that fractal. I am embodying mathematics, a fractal representation of organic reproduction, of sequential growth in my own very distinct, unique way. And I don't have to do anything or change anything to even be that, for I am that already. Just as the fractal, just as the number, just as each potential, it doesn't need to define uniqueness, for uniqueness is defined by it being. It's such a self-fulfilling paradox, right? And when we accept that as it is and just say, oh, that's it. There's no seeking, there's no nothing to do to keep that in motion. There's emotion about it. Of course, it's holding a paradox within yourself, so there's movement about it. But it's like treading water. You're not actually going anywhere, but you are collecting polarity and momentum. And that really can be used as a divine service. That's what empowers positive service. That's the ever-flowing, pay it forward, eternal motion of life. But sometimes the negative sees that as something that needs to do something. It tricks itself with the great inversion and says that because there's happenings, there must be more to do, right? It's such a strange working to get through and to lean into the quiet relaxation of doing and being. I'll get into more of that later because I could talk about that for hours. But this prayer, sometimes that contemplation point between ourselves, we can be like a dog chasing our tail around and around and around a center point and never actually sitting down, when they want to lay down, but they've got to walk the bed. Sometimes they do it too many times and you're like, oh, just lay down. That's kind of how I feel sometimes when I'm ruminating over these dualistic opposing points within myself, or within life structuring, or within whatever you want to look of as the setup of this game, or the truths to be ruminated upon and explored here. But it always comes back down to, well, we have one point of view and one time and one life of exploration. Really, we can only do one thing. As wonderful multitaskers many of us are, we still just have one life to fulfill, right? We can only choose one point of development in the fractal. You are one tile in the mosaic, right? And every tile is a beautiful point of that whole image when we stand outside a building and look at that window image, right? Each tile's hue, their shape, their placement is important. If it's not there, if it's cracked, if it's broken or empty, or if it was the wrong color, it makes a big impact on the whole, right? But if you're zoomed in, or you're just making that one tile, or before they come together, or if you've got your face pressed up so close that you can't see the whole image, this is kind of the lens of observer and the visualization of metaphors I'm hoping to help people understand what I have developed over 2 years of combing through these words. But to understand that when I say the words, I'm living my day, I'm building my day to the fulfillment of his, that part of his purpose, which is mine to fulfill. It's like me saying, I am owning that one tile fractal that's my right as the artist to create. I only have one tile to make a part of God's whole image. We've all been given one tile each. And it's like, what do you do with that? How do you make it shine brightest? How do you embody that hue that you have been chosen to fulfill this time around? The best that you can, to make it sing with all the others in harmony in the best way that it can. And here comes the next parts of the prayer, which are kind of the instructions about how we do this. I love how the prayer is in such sections. I'm going to go over that better when I write the blog up, because I think it's going to be, or when I finish the blog, as I put it out, it'll be better for a visualization to see it sectioned out, and then to see the categories and themes of each kind of section that it rolls through. But this is sort of feels like a different section. And it's more of the instructions. So we've kind of given our salutation to the day. We've started off with a welcome. We've gave our intention of what we're coming here to do, right? To set up the day and to give glory to the One, and to also recognize our purpose and His great setup here. And now we want to take action in it. So how can we do that? And Walter Russell says, so that I may meet the day with knowledge to build the day, I will look into my soul while it is yet dawn, before the morning breaketh. And I love the old-timey words. At first I kind of felt strange saying it, but now I really do love saying them. And so, he says, these are the words with which I greet the day. These are the words of the morning. This is the spirit of the dawn. This is the thought with which I meet the day, which descendeth upon me, and which cannot be turned away. And I love that because, again, he's like, the day cannot be turned away. The responsibility that ignites, the images of the dawn rising, and when I'm saying this on Sunday mornings, it's dawn, it's the morning, it's before I do anything in my day, it's when the sun's coming up. Usually, I'm up with the sun, I'm an early riser. And it's just the spirit of the dawn. I love that because it helps to ignite, and it helps me to remember and to really work to embody that adventurous curiosity, that newness that comes with really every day. Every day is a new opportunity, a new day at it, a fresh start, and then it's not just putting rose-tinted glasses on it either. Again, because there's that signature sovereignty that he's expressing, and that you and I, when I say this, I have to acknowledge, and that each day it sits like a seed within me when I sit in the sun in the morning, that I remember and feel that responsibility, that the day is descending on me. The light of the God source, of the Logos, the great organic, clock, the directions that are coming down from before and after, from outside the here and now, the great remembrance of all purpose for each one of us, and the design designated in the whole of the plan, shining down in the morning, reigniting us, and telling me, the day can't be turned away, and it's on, it's coming down and shining on you. And it's asking us and asking me these questions, right? These are the words that I choose to ask myself each day. And now I'm going to go again back to the prayer and, say the words that he's referring to as he's saying these are the words of the morning. And I think he says this is the spirit of the dawn. All of the things that have already been ignited in this prayer, even though some of the prayer seems segregatory and almost like it's written separately. That's how it seems to me. At first, it seemed like that to me. Now I really feel a flow in it. And I feel like he says that, to reignite all that he's already brought forth in the start of the prayer. But then to now take it even deeper, to really ask of yourself and of God here in the morning, each morning, who am I? I alone am not I. Thou, my Father, art I. Now again, these old-timey language, and I wasn't like a theater kid. I wasn't into Shakespeare, any of that kind of stuff. I always thought, I just didn't jive with it really. I attempted to kind of get into Shakespeare a bit in college. Some people were, but it didn't really resonate with me. And I just felt silly, sort of, about it. But yeah, this time around and this rekindling of it, this has really been nice for me. But if you're feeling like, ugh, what the heck about the wording, you're not alone. But I really love, and each time I've said this now, every time anew, every Sunday. Sometimes I say it great passion and this burning aliveness. You know, who am I? I alone am not I. Thou, my Father, art I. And I feel this great sovereign embrace and empower that, you know, a rightfulness of who I am, and that, of course, I alone am not I. You know, I am you. I am a fractal representation of you, and I feel so invigorated by that. And other times, it's a great sadness. It's a great asking and a lonely seeking of who am I? Right? I alone am not I. Who am I? And when thou comes in, right, it's like a saving. It's like my Father, art I. You know, and it's a remembrance. It's a support. It's a leaning into that comes with that. There's many different flavors in between, of course, but those are sort of, the opposing kind of really strong ones that everything else sort of melts in between. It's so wonderful, the different envisionments that this sections sort of call up within me. I've gotten so many different teachings and workings and unlocked so many different alchemic sort of epiphanies and contemplation points. Sort of like, the oyster making the pearl. It's that grating against. It's that kicking around the ground inside myself, making space. Such a working, such an amazing point of coming back to the same prayer over and over again. That creates new understandings, new perceptions, right? It seems so simplistic and it's kind of obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. This episode is coming up on a half an hour, which is about as long as I like to make them. And I feel like I have gone through quite a bit already. And also the next lines, they come up with the word favor, which is another word I am definitely going to be doing my Deconstructing Distortions series video on that word. I love that word. And so what a good time to sort of add it in, and we can wrap it up here with these lines, and then in my next episode I'll pick it up there and get into these next lines, but we'll have a little bit of a cliffhanger as to what we're getting into for next time. So after we say my Father art I am favored of thee, my Creator. I am of the inner mind. And I'm going to leave it there because I'm not going to talk about the favored, as I said, but I am going to bring in that inner mind and also talk about this phrase here, how it's morphed for me through my own sort of distortions and become instead, I am favored of thee, my Creator, because I am of the inner mind. And making and acknowledging the choice point that is there of becoming and acknowledging that inner eye, the eye of the observer. And when you look at it, or him, well, he looks right back at you. And then and you are under the scope of observance, of divine essence, and your own essence is ignited, your purpose and role is ignited because, by observing something, the Creator defines purpose. It sets a boundary for reasons, right? So I'll leave it there with a sort of pondering tidbit as maybe kind of homework for anybody who is listening and who wants to do a little inner rumination or seeking on their own, maybe making that a practice of going inwards and looking and feeling and remembering that great observance and not feeling judgment or feeling worry or shame or fear or guilt about anything. Because it's from a place of unconditional love and teaching and learning, and your divine right as a creator, fractal being of source to discover and to develop your fractal bit, to make your choices, to see what you'll do with yours. Because it's an infinite discovery of definite points held within a scope of infinity, or as close to it as we could get, for it's ever expanding. So we'll see how, but yeah, I'll leave it there, as we've hit about 31 minutes now. So thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I hope you have a beautiful day or evening, wherever you are in the world today and whenever it is. And I'm sure I will catch you next time.